Chapter 586, Set Out for Lop Nur. If the class aptitude geniuses had been called back to school as a means to motivate the ordinary Daoyuan class students, Lu Shu's return was to motivate those class aptitude geniuses. Certainly, the geniuses could serve to motivate Lu Shu as well. Having completed their own missions, the class aptitude geniuses now had a somewhat powerful air around them. Their missions were life-threatening in nature, which spurred their mental maturity when they looked straight into the eyes of death. The return of those 80 people back to the cultivation colleges of their own cities created a stir among ordinary Daoyuan class students, because of the drastic changes in their personality and temperament in comparison with their old selves. Nie Ting and Shi Xuejin could see their rapid growth, and it was perfectly possible that someone might ascend to Class B in no time. Although Lu Shu's progress was even faster, he could be easily surpassed if he stopped putting in effort. He had to be put to good use, since he was determined not to venture overseas. After Nie Ting hung up the call, Shi Xuejin said, smiling, "Do you think Lu Shu and those geniuses will be mutual inspiration for each other in Lop Nur? But I have a question. Li Xianyi has never declared that Lu Shu was his disciple, but it seems to me that he has taught him everything. Not everyone can inherit the secret techniques of Qi Mountain and the Sea of Qi from the Hall of Swords. In my memories, he and Li Xianyi had been neighbors ever since the dawn of the Spirit Qi era. Back then, with his dilapidated foundation, it's very likely that Li Xianyi was in a hurry to pass down his skills, and this might have given Lu Shu the chance to learn his swordplay. However, it is uncertain whether Lu Shu can be counted as Li Xianyi's disciple. Because Li Xianyi has never even tried to convince Lu Shu to join the Golden Foundation, Nie Ting replied calmly. You are expecting Lu Shu to uphold and develop the noble cause of the Golden Foundation? Forget it. Shi Xuejin laughed. Just when they were chatting, Nie Ting's phone rang. He took a look at the caller's ID and picked up the call. Yes? Li Yixiao. Can I have special permission to go to school too? Recently I feel that I am lacking in knowledge and hence would like to further my studies in a school environment. If I am given the chance, I will be able to serve our country better in the future. Nie Ting drew a deep breath and hissed, "Get lost." After he sent Li Yixiao away, Lu Shu started packing his luggage, which contained a few sets of clothes, useful equipment and some food. He did a casual search online on Lop Nur, which showed that the place was characterized by its odd and barren Yardong landforms. Most of its land was covered by deserts with little vegetation. Water would be a crucial problem on the trip, but the Heavenly Network must have had ample preparation in this area given the huge number of people involved. Besides, Chun Bailey was also equipped with invisible storage equipment, provided by the Heavenly Network for every Heavenly King. Most of the rumors existed in the form of folk tales and their credibility could not be trusted. Lu Shu believed that in the current Spirit Qi era, practitioners could even ignore the harsh external environmental restrictions such as sandstorms. Yet, the appearance of a relic implied that there were hidden dangers. They would not be fighting against natural hazards, but rather, real magical creatures and a strange civilization. Lu Shu learned from Li Yixiao that those class aptitude geniuses had grown up after their deadly missions. And now, all cultivation college students were forced to train their combat effectiveness in the relic. One could not deny the Heavenly Network's increasing haste for progress. Zhong Yutong informed Lu Shu to depart at night, which gave Lu Shu the time to make a special trip to buy goggles and a windbreaker. It was not because he was afraid of the cold, though, but rather he simply would not appreciate the storms blinding his eyes. The money spent on those was insignificant against the potential gain from the relic exploration. Lu Shu spent a whopping 3 hours bargaining only. When Zhong Yutong's car sent to fetch him had arrived, Lu Shu was still in the shopping mall. Lu Shu saw Zhong Yutong waiting outside his house when he finally returned home. Zhong Yutong was silent for a long moment before he asked, "Can you tell me where have you been? What took you so long?" Lu Shu took 2 seconds and came up with a clever response. As a member of the Heavenly Network, I investigated the civilians' opinions on the commodity prices in the magical era. Okay. So what have you found? Zhang Yutong asked, stunned. I realized that the local prices are exorbitant. Hence, I corrected their wrong views, replied Lu Shu. Fancy you describing bargaining in such a noble way. You spent more than 1 hour just to get a lower price for 5 pairs of socks, Zhang Yutong said, expressionless. From Zhang Yutong's distress, plus 666. Look at you. Lu Shu grinned awkwardly but somehow politely. Where is our car? When are we leaving? According to the original plan, Lu Shu would be driven to the Daoyuan camp at the junction of the 3 states before setting out to Lop Nur, via a military personnel carrier. He was informed at the camp that other students had departed more than a day ago, and he would be leaving with the last group, which consisted of 7 students who were injured during the actual combat practice. They could only leave after they had fully recovered, because any action would be impeded by their wounds. The 7 of them had never met Lu Shu at the camp. When they gathered, Lu Shu was empty-handed while the rest carried huge backpacks stuffed with provisions and tents. The atmosphere was rather awkward, as if Lu Shu was a tourist while the rest were going to the battlefield. The 7 of them were not from the same team, but they had long since been acquaintances during the time in the sick bay. A person whispered to others softly, "Who is that guy? Look how fair his skin is, I don't think he's been through the training. Did he come through the back door?" It was very natural, because students with privileged backgrounds could also be exempted from military training. Agreed. He's not tanned at all. Besides, those class aptitude geniuses are even darker than us, so he's certainly not one of them either, another person whispered back. They had seen those geniuses, who were all pitch black from the intense training. Under those conditions, no amount of sunblock was ever enough. Chapter 587, Lu Shu the Flower in the Greenhouse. At this time, everyone was nervous, because they had been warned about the dangers of the Lop Nur ruins. Moreover, the training had shaped their attitude to be one of seriousness. On the other hand, Lu Shu, who looked rather carefree, indeed seemed like someone who had joined through illegitimate means. We shall wait and see. It's a different matter if he really is a flower in the greenhouse, another person commented. It was the same as how Gao Shinin used to despise Chen Zuan, as those who had gone through hardships tended to hold the weak in contempt. Furthermore, the 7 of them were daring individuals, which explained their injuries during the actual combat practice. At this moment, the chief officer arrived. Just when Lu Shu was about to wave hi at him, the officer shivered slightly in shock and immediately pulled him aside out of other people's sight. Nice to see you again, Captain Lu. How are you doing? Lu Shu smiled. I'm fine. Why are you here? I thought you were at the capital. Back then, we... Captain Lu, let bygones be bygones, the chief officer said, embarrassed. I was assigned to be the chief officer of the camp. Your sister, Lu Xiaoyu, did very well. Lu Shu now understood that he had been pulled here because the man did not want his dark history of getting beaten up by Lu Shu to be exposed. In any case, as a chief officer, he needed to save some face. Of course, of course. Lu Shu laughed. He certainly had to show some respect. Not far away, the 7 students could not hear a word of their conversation, but they had noticed something strange. Have you ever seen the chief officer so amiable to anyone before? Nope. He must have a very powerful background for the chief officer to be so kind to him, another person asserted. It seems we are right, he came through the back door. Ha! Sadly, the time has changed. Even if he has some background, sooner or later he will be left behind without sufficient power. Another person sneered. When Lu Shu returned to the team, he noticed a slight change in the atmosphere, as though the 7 students were not willing to interact with him at all. Lu Shu did not mind though, because he was there to explore the ruins, not to socialize. The chief officer gave his instructions while facing them. I shall not repeat the danger of this Lopner ruins. I expect each of you to observe the rules on the way. It will not be a short journey. Don't be the black sheep in your teams. Your performance in the exploration will be recorded in your future files. This is a serious matter. The 7 people answered solemnly, yes, sir. It was more like an opportunity for the talented students, who had become even stronger after the training, to finally display all their abilities. Without any experience in field survival and actual combat, they were excited about the upcoming adventure as if it was their new toy. The ride on the military carrier was not one of comfort. In fact, it was even less stable than a green train, a type of slow, cheap trains that were prevalent in China until the 1990s. On the bright side, the carrier was comparatively spacious given that there were only 8 people on board. This time, the Heavenly Network had not only chartered a huge fleet of military carriers to transport the tens of thousands of students to Lopner, they had also hired numerous trains headed towards the northern border of the country. Fortunately, the transportation system in China was very developed nowadays, and the number of passengers during the Lunar New Year could even hit 2.9 billion every year. It was like a national migration across the entirety of China. Many social problems had been solved effortlessly with the improvement in infrastructure. The 7 students were engaged in a heated discussion about the things to take note about the ruins. Soon, they heard Lu Shu snoring from their side. Lu Shu was fast asleep on the bench beside the loading compartment, despite the bumpy ride. From Jiangfeng's distress, plus 66. From Li Jianren's distress, plus 66. From Jiangfeng gave a cold laugh. No early preparation and no equipment, he's doomed. Li Jianren could not care less. We can't do anything if he wants to die in there. In fact, Lu Shu had gone through 3 ruins, and he was well aware that the internal situation of the ruins could never be known from the outside. For example, things like skeletons that emerged from the ground of the Beimang ruins, the magical trees of the Salt Lake ruins, and gargoyles of Kochang Island. Who could possibly anticipate those in advance? Hence, the most important matter at the moment was sufficient rest, instead of engaging in ill-founded speculations. Nonetheless, Jiang Feng's team could not have possibly known Lu Shu's true identity either. To those ordinary Daoyuan class students, the Class A aptitude geniuses were the strongest individuals among their peers, but to Shi Xuejin, Lu Shu was on yet an even higher level than them. Of course, it remained to be seen whether he would be caught up to in the end. Actually, Lu Shu was not sleeping throughout the entire journey, but he rested with his eyes closed even when he was awake. His flying daggers, corpse dog and concealed arrow, did not waste any time scraping against the Qi mountain, just like what they had done before the collapse of the mountain. Lu Shu's sword practice did not stop for a single day since his return from the collection of gods. In addition, under Hai Gongzi's instructions, the accumulation of snow had sped up by more than twice as compared to before. As a result, Lu Shu's Qi mountain had increased in size in merely 2 months. The mountain grew in height as it was sharpened. Maybe the sword spirit would appear again when the snow mountain was formed. Lu Shu felt great pain at the moment the mountain collapsed, but he was soon pleasantly surprised at the birth of the sword spirit. Li Xianyi's way of sharpening the Qi mountain was simple and mechanical, and only aimed to produce more nascent aura blades for battles as it went. But Lu Shu had obtained an extra sword spirit by enduring the temporary pain. Now, he already knew whose method was more effective. He had also told the old man about it. The old man was dumbfounded when he learned that a sword spirit appeared with the collapse of Lu Shu's Qi mountain. He had definitely not seen that coming. Back then, he was merely making a suggestion without much confidence. How did Lu Shu even succeed? How lucky was he? His sea of Qi was supposed to be suppressed by the snow mountain, and yet it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Chapter 588, Founder Lu Shu, 666. There were ancestors in the Hall of Swords whose Qi mountain had collapsed. But for those ancestors, their mountain had collapsed because it had been destroyed by others. None of the cases were like this, where a sword spirit had appeared. Thus, from the look of things, the sword spirits of the ancestors most likely died when the mountain was destroyed. But Lu Shu was different. He had bred a sword spirit. Li Xianyi suddenly realized that Lu Shu may have been the first to do so in the Hall of Swords. The method to unlock the Sea of Qi was to develop the body. Many schools of thought felt that humans had boundless potential, hence the secret to one's body development was to go against the natural order of training. Lu Shu had discovered the method to breed sword spirits. There was no doubt that he had found a new path and excavated new potential. This discovery would definitely land Lu Shu in the Hall of Swords historical records. But this was somewhat of a problem. Lu Shu was not part of the Hall of Swords. How could an outsider be in their records? But the discovery that the Qi Mountain could breed sword spirits was a very important discovery. Even Li Xianyi started to scrape down his Qi Mountain after he had heard this. But when Li Xianyi asked Lu Shu about the abilities of the sword spirit, Lu Shu was not willing to tell him. He did not know why. Li Xianyi was curious how the sword spirits he had bred were like. Li Xianyi had restored his foundation, thus he was not in a rush to find a successor. If nothing unexpected occurred, he had a lifespan of over 200 years at least. Under these circumstances, he could slowly look for a successor. Suddenly, Li Xianyi had an idea. He wanted to ask whether Lu Shu would be willing to enter the Hall of Swords and take him as his teacher. After all, Lu Shu's discovery was very important to the Hall of Swords. But Li Xianyi did not ask him. He felt that as long as he asked Lu Shu would agree, because Lu Shu had let down his guard against Li Xianyi. If he asked Lu Shu over the phone, it would be the most careless case of taking a teacher in the history of the Hall of Swords. Niating and Shi Xuejin were guessing the relationship between Li Xianyi and Lu Shu. Were they teacher and student? The answer was no. Li Xianyi hesitated before finally writing in the Hall of Sword records. AD 2011, Lu Shu's talent surpassed that of the founding fathers. Before he unlocked his Sea of Qi, he gathered air to form clouds, gathered clouds to form rain, gathered rain to form rivers, gathered rivers to form seas, and eventually established the Qi Mountain before he unlocked the Sea of Qi. He could not unlock the Sea of Qi because of suppression from the Qi Mountain, thus Lu Shu collapsed the Qi Mountain. This caused the Qi Mountain to produce a sword spirit. From this day onwards, there is an additional method to impart swordplay. As he wrote this paragraph, Li Xianyi could think of what the descendants of the Hall of Swords would write. Founder Lu Shu is awesome. Senpai Lu Shu, 666. Thinking about this, Li Xianyi felt that the ancestors had been playing around with the Book of Records. This was probably the earliest record of background updates and comments on paper. But Li Xianyi probably did not think that as he destroyed his own Qi Mountain to breed a sword spirit, Lu Shu had begun to scrape his second Qi Mountain. Scraping a Qi Mountain could not be done in a day. Lu Shu had spent a significant time building and collapsing his Qi Mountain. Unconsciously, Lu Shu, who was going to turn 18 soon, had become more composed. He was neither rushed or slow, neither conceited nor rash. The military truck hurried on even at night. 2 warriors took turns to drive. In this journey to enter the Lop Nur remains, ordinary soldiers provided background support for the practitioners. When dinnertime approached, the military truck stopped at a service area along the expressway to take a break. They strictly followed the rules. Even if there were 2 drivers rotating shifts, they had to have a break in between. After all, it was a journey of over 2,000 kilometers. 7 students from the Daoyuan class sat together to eat. After Lu Shu slowly woke up from his sleep, he joined the 2 soldiers. Lu Shu was curious. How many ordinary soldiers are involved in the background work this time round? Around 10,000. Actually, we don't have to do much. We mainly have to transport logistics and manpower, one of the soldiers said with a smile. Now, the Daoyuan class students are much stronger than before. In the past, we still had to pitch tents. Now, you have your own campsite. But we are still in charge of the cooking. Lu Shu nodded his head. These were the results of the military training. They did not necessarily apply their military strategies. After all, only blood and fire could truly train the Daoyuan class students. But now, at least the overweight newborns had weaned. This was a good sign. Lu Shu explained, when the remains are about to open, remember to hide far away. If you get caught inside, it will be hard to come out alive. He was not making a discriminatory remark that the abilities of the ordinary soldiers were lacking. This was the reality. Even if an ordinary person was fully equipped with defensive gear, it would be very hard for them to survive. Lu Shu saw the 7 Daoyuan class students with a standard long sword. All the students in the cultivation college likely had that same sword. But as time passed, the Heavenly Network's preparations became more complete. The 2 soldiers looked at each other while hungrily gulping down on their food. Don't worry about that. Our superiors have told us about it. We will be careful. When that time comes, someone will alert us. If we are really caught inside, we still have you guys to protect us, right? The 2 soldiers did not expect that a student would be concerned about them. This made them feel warm inside. After all, they had worked day and night sending the students to the ruins. If the students felt that this was only expected of them and treated them coldly, they would feel uncomfortable no matter how much they had obeyed commands. When the 7 Daoyuan class students heard this, they laughed. If you are caught inside, we will definitely protect you. Don't worry. We are a family. But the student called Jiang Feng interrupted, but I don't know whether that person beside you will be able to protect you. The 2 soldiers felt uneasy. They now realized that there were still many things the Daoyuan class students did not know about one another. But they did not feel that Lu Shu was weak. It was the exact opposite. They felt that Lu Shu was more relaxed than the other Daoyuan class students. This feeling was like when they saw seasoned veterans on the border. In recent years, the country was peaceful, but it was different on the borders. They had heard from the veterans that once, when 2 soldiers were keeping guard at the border, they had been killed by a sniper. This certainly happened. Even if there was no magical energy in the world was not as safe as you would imagine. Lu Shu glanced at Jiang Feng and the other students. He smiled. You all are experts. I pray that you will be able to make extraordinary achievements in the ruins. If we pass by each other, please protect me. Jiang Feng said coldly, how about learning how to protect yourself, instead of waiting for others to protect you? 0. Chinese Internet Slang Meaning Skilled. Chapter 589, Heroes Respect Heroes. They had taken 1 week to travel to the Lop Nur remains. Daoyuan class students from all over the country had set off in batches. The first and second batch would have most likely reached the ruins by now. It was a coincidence that the Lop Nur remains were discovered. After all, it was a depopulated zone. It had even been used as a test site for nuclear weapons. Even scientists rarely visited the place. No one knew when the Lop Nur remains started to show signs. When it was discovered, it was close to opening. Nieting allowed all those in the Daoyuan class whose abilities were above Class E to participate. One reason was to allow them to train. Furthermore, there had been more and more intruders on the borders recently. No one knew where the puppet master and the bishop of the Department of Faith Theory had gone. Even Nieting did not dare to carelessly punish an individual as an example to others. Thus, the Daoyuan class was allowed to enter. The responsibility of the Heavenly Network members, on the other hand, was to defend their territory. Lu Shu did not pay attention to the sarcasm from Jiang Feng and the other students. He tried to coax information from them. Have you heard of Lu Xiaoyu from the Luo City Daoyuan class? Jiang Feng's and Li Jianren's expression changed. We cannot defeat Lu Xiaoyu, but that does not explain the problem. She is already a Class C. It's not embarrassing if we can't defeat her. Don't think that just because we lost to her, means that we don't dare to teach you a lesson. It's the same if you participate in the military training. Besides, it is normal to get injured during actual combat practice. From Jiang Feng's distress, plus 199. From Li Jianren's distress, plus 199. When Lu Shu saw these distress points, he was dumbfounded. So Lu Xiaoyu had sent these two to the hospital. He had only wanted to gather information on how Lu Xiaoyu was doing in the military training. But these two had thought that Lu Shu was using Lu Xiaoyu to make fun of them. You can't defeat her with so many people? Did you specifically target her? Lu Shu was curious. If Lu Xiaoyu did not make use of Anthony and Johnson, she had the strength of an ordinary Class C, nothing else was special about her. One of the students was slightly more frank. We have considered many methods to target her, but we had too little time to work together and thus, we could not establish a tacit agreement among all of us. Her abilities far surpass that of ours too. She can easily break apart our formation. Now, that group of girls have good teamwork and are belligerent. They have become especially fierce and aggressive. We can't defeat them. Lu Shu smacked his lips. So that was the situation in the military camp. Now, he knew where the distress points from boys that Lu Xiaoyu had earned came from. She had earned them from beating up people during the practice combat. Lu Shu was somewhat remorseful. If he had known that practice combat could earn so many distress points, he would have volunteered to join the military training a long time ago. Although we were beaten up by her, we still respect her, said Jiang Feng coldly. She doesn't use her bloodline to convince others. She uses her actual strength. Lu Shu was being ridiculed. Li Jianren laughed. That's right, as a guy, I really respect them. They have turned from weak sheep to aggressive tigers. Lu Xiaoyu's contributions cannot go unnoticed. Lu Shu felt as if these people respected Lu Xiaoyu and the other girls as heroes. Lu Shu felt that this was somewhat odd. I heard that Lu Xiaoyu has an even more impressive brother called Lu Shu. He is a Class C and is even a major. Lu Xiaoyu often talks about him. It seems like no one can beat Lu Shu. Apparently, he had gone on missions with Class A geniuses. What's more legendary is that an expert overseas had issued an arrest warrant for him. Who knows when another person like him will appear? This is really the era of heroes, Jiang Feng sighed. Lu Shu felt even more strange. Yes, the era of heroes, this Lu Shu must be very talented and elegant. Furthermore, he is very rich although he is so young, let me think of more praise for him. Jiang Feng said scornfully, what does being a hero have to do with being rich? No, this, Lu Shu emphasized. Jiang Feng was confused. Li Jianren laughed coldly. You speak as if you are Lu Shu himself. Ever since Lu Shu had returned from the collection of gods, all the information regarding him had been kept classified. Thus, they could not even find a portrait of Lu Shu after hearing about his achievements. Furthermore, Jiang Feng's information was outdated. Lu Shu was already a captain. The thoughts and emotions of the students in the Daoyuan class were very complex. Although they acknowledged Lu Shu's abilities and thought of him as a hero, but, in a nutshell, their thoughts and emotions were very complex. The vehicle continued to head west. The road opened up to a boundless desert. When Lu Shu began to see the military trucks of the same type, he knew that they were not too far away from Lop Nur. The surrounding land looked weirder and weirder. The vastness of Earth and the mysterious Mother Nature was amazing. The lush and green scenery had given way to yellow sand and odd yard-on landforms. It was as if they had entered another world. The vehicle slowed to a stop. Lu Shu could hear someone outside saying, "Get off and show your documents." The drivers told the 8 people sitting behind, "Everyone has to get down and undergo a document check. After going in, we can go by foot." Lu Shu jumped off the military truck and looked round. A massive campsite had been built in this so-called depopulated zone. This place had become overcrowded with people. Lu Shu looked up at the sky. Dusk was approaching. He prepared to take out his documents for the officials to check. Jiang Feng and the others were already one step ahead. Everyone passed through very smoothly. After their documents were scanned, their military rank and basic particulars would appear. But when it came to Lu Shu, the 2 soldiers in charge was dumbfounded. The word "top secret" appeared. They could not see anything. They could not see his name, age, gender, and even rank. There was only a line of words at the bottom of the page. All access except for Class A restricted zones. Furthermore, Nye Ting's signature was there. The 2 soldiers looked at each other helplessly. They bowed at Lu Shu. "This, please enter." Lu Shu bowed. "Thank you." When Jiang Feng and the others saw Lu Shu walk in, they were dumbfounded. If Lu Shu was really the son of an influential family as they had thought, then how would they explain their top secret? This was not the treatment that those families would receive. Nye Ting's signature made them even more shocked. All the Daoyuan class students looked up to Nye Ting. Chapter 590, Good Eyesight. After they entered the military camp, they were greeted by personnel who helped them complete the procedures. Everyone who entered the camp had to wear a badge on their chest in order for them to move around the camp. Security was quite strict. After all, fugitives often fled here. This was also a place where intruders could randomly gain access into the country. It was not easy to guard such a vast territory. Lu Shu asked curiously, "Where are the rest of the Daoyuan class students?" The person leading them said, "The ruins have opened. Those who had arrived earlier have gone into the ruins. You need to wait for the last batch of people to arrive before going in. You are not in a rush, right?" After all, they had to be methodical in doing this. It would be too messy if everyone was allowed to enter once they reached the campsite. "No hurry, no hurry. Where are the remains?" Lu Shu asked. He had intended to look for Lu Xiaoyu after this. But he did not think that Lu Xiaoyu had already entered the remains. Thinking about how a group of Daoyuan class had gone ahead to look for resources made Lu Shu somewhat sad. But Lu Shu had a lot of experience under his belt. He knew that there was no difference if they went into the ruins 1 or 2 days later. He could still find many useful items inside. The remains are 7 kilometers north of Lop Nur. We need to take a car to go there, but we cannot get too close. We can only guard the outskirts. The person speaking seemed to be from the Heavenly Network. The main task for Heavenly Network members this time round was to guard the outskirts and prevent any suspicious persons from forcing their way into the remains. The Heavenly Network monopolized the remains in the country, unlike overseas where remains quickly became like a carnival to practitioners from all over the world. "How long have they been inside?" Lu Shu casually asked. 5 days, someone answered. Lu Shu gasped in shock. The students inside must be in danger. As comrades, we have to hurry up and save them. The Heavenly Network member leading them said, "Didn't you say that there was no hurry? Just wait. We have to wait until the last batch arrives. I have just received information that they will arrive in 1.5 hours. Trains did not come here, thus the military trucks were the only possible form of transport." When Lu Shu found out that the other Daoyuan class students had been here for 5 days, he burned with impatience. Chen Bailey was in the lead for this mission. With Chen Bailey's abilities, he could obtain the relic within a matter of days. So what was the point of Lu Shu coming all the way here for? While waiting for a fleet of vehicles to arrive, 100 Daoyuan-class students alighted from 5 military trucks. A fat figure took the lead, rushing forth with valiance. The fatty seemed to be the leader of this group of students. They all grouped around their revered leader. Jiang Feng looked at them and said, "They are probably the class aptitude geniuses who have just returned from their task." There was some envy in his voice. Every single class aptitude genius had changed after returning from their task. In the past, people had only admired their talents. After all, there was not much difference among them aside from their talents. But it was different now. These geniuses had experienced blood and fire to emerge as elites. Everyone had not just admiration towards them but also respect. Some even worshipped them. The group of people walked over. When the fatty saw Lu Shu and his group, he stopped in his tracks. It was as if he was not certain of what he had seen and walked closer to have a proper look. Suddenly, there was a terrible wail. "Brother Shu! Brother Shu, there you are! Do you know how much I've suffered these 2 months?" Lu Shu said, "Chen Zuan." To be honest, Lu Shu felt that Chen Zuan had changed significantly. In the past, he was chubby. Now, he seemed tougher. In short, he did not slim down. Lu Shu also knew that Chen Zuan was not a Class A genius, yet he had been assigned by Nie Ting to complete a mission. But Nie Ting's allocation was ingenious. For example, Chao Qingxi's task was very dangerous. Although Chen Zuan's ability was low, Nie Ting had allocated him to a task that tested his willpower and endurance. Lu Shu asked curiously, "What happened to your eyesight? Could you not see me from that distance?" Chen Zuan pulled Lu Shu to a side and said softly, "Don't you know where Heavenly King Nye had sent me to do? The place that I went to had miasma. I almost turned blind." Chen Zuan had really changed a lot. Although he had vented his grievances, he did not reveal the nature of his task. That was confidential information. "Oh," Lu Shu nodded his head. "I feel that you have gained a lot from this task. It looks like you have grown a lot." Chen Zuan laughed. "Now that my eyesight is not good, I can no longer see things that are far away. The doctor said that it would take 6 months before I completely recover. Thus, I'll leave myself in your care when we go in the remains. Our friendship hasn't changed, right?" Lu Shu glanced at him. He did not even wear a watch. He pointed to the setting Sunday. "What is that?" Chen Zuan was dumbfounded. "The sun. The sun is 92,950,000 kilometers away. How much further do you want to see?" Lu Shu asked. Chen Zuan was speechless. From Chen Zuan's distress, plus 666. "Okay, since everyone is here, let's hurry up and go in." Lu Shu was impatient. When Jiang Feng and the rest saw Chen Zuan and Lu Shu quietly talking in a corner, they felt like ever since they stepped into the campsite, they could not understand this son of an influential family. Was their initial judgment wrong? But Chen Zuan had called him Brother Shu, not Lu Shu. They could not understand what was going on. Shu? What kind of name was that? Furthermore, the people who had followed behind Chen Zuan seemed to have accepted Lu Shu as one of the Class A aptitude geniuses. Chen Zuan only said that he had gone on a mission and participated in the military training with the Class A aptitude geniuses, but when others asked about his natural talents, he avoided the subject. If he did not do so, the fact that he did not have Class A aptitude would be exposed. It would be hard for him to carry on this act. What meaning was there in life if one did not act their way through it? Lu Shu was desperate to enter the remains. He asked the Heavenly Network member to have a car send them to the remains. Chen Zuan stuck to Lu Shu like a sticky sweet. He followed Lu Shu wherever Lu Shu went. To Chen Zuan, there was nothing more reasonable than cozying up to Lu Shu when they entered the remains. His granduncle, Chen Bailey, was in the ruins, but Chen Zuan could not cling on to him. A fleet of 5 military trucks rushed to the north. As they exited the campsite, the sun finally set below the horizon. The last rays of light had started to disappear. At that moment, a massive hole suddenly opened up in the campsite.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.